Welcome to the Cheating Secrets channel. Elvis died in the bathroom. Everyone knows that. Judy Garland did too. Bless her. But not many know that King George II also died in the bathroom. More precisely, on the toilet. I'm a historian, so it seems fitting that my life would end in the same way. Of course, I might not die. It seems I've had a stroke in the bathroom of my favorite pub by the harbor. My head hurts a lot right now. There are probably worse ways to die. I just had a great meal and a pint of my favorite ale. Many men would be happy to meet their maker after that. It's a shame, though, that I had to overhear Ben Mortimer talking about how amazing the sex with my loving wife Mim is. How she has a fantastic chest and is incredibly responsive. How great she is at kissing and how she gives quite spectacular pleasure. After 32 years of marriage, of course, I knew all that. But I would have preferred to die without knowing that someone else knew it too. What I didn't know, however, was how great sex is from behind. She refused to do that with me since the early years of our marriage. She said it was degrading and that her knees hurt. Apparently, she could overcome the pain if she was doing it with a 19-year-old boy, the boy I once taught. Of course, I might not die. I might survive. If I do, I'll teach Ben Mortimer a lesson he'll never forget. The little bastard. I don't often go to the pub alone. Usually, I go with friends or with Mim. But that time, she was staying overnight with her parents, so to avoid cooking for myself, I decided to have dinner at the pub. Steak and potatoes, if anyone's curious. I'm a history teacher at the local high school in North Yorkshire. I've been working there for over 30 years. I often end up teaching the children of those I once taught. I haven't taught their grandchildren yet, but that's probably not far off. I noticed Ben Mortimer and his friend Kieran Yates leaning against the bar. I quickly did the math and realized that it had been about 3 years since I last taught them. They're over 18 now, so they're allowed to drink. After my meal, I approached them to catch up and see what they're up to these days. It turns out both of them work at the same cookie factory as Mim. They're in the production line, and she works as the secretary to the managing director. Kieran snickered into his beer when I asked if they knew her. Ben said he'd seen her a few times when he had to report to the boss. She's a pleasant woman, he said. We laughed, and I treated them both to a drink during our conversation. I said my goodbyes and decided to pop into the bathroom on the way out. I had just settled down on the toilet when I heard two guys walk in. I don't know how you can be so calm about this, Ben. Mr. Moore is such a nice guy. He just treated us both to a pint of beer. He was the best teacher I've ever had. I couldn't stand history until he came along. How can you talk to him so normally when you're sleeping with his missus? Because I think he's a great guy too. That's why I don't do anything to hurt him. I really like him, honestly. I just like fondling Mrs. Moore's big old chest even more. Of course, Kieran snickered. But it's still wrong. Listen, I'm doing him a favor, mate. It's not my fault he can't get it up anymore, right? I'm kind of like his stunt double. I give her what he can't, and trust me, if it weren't me, it'd be someone else. I'm not threatening their marriage, am I? A 53-year-old woman isn't going to run off with me, and I'm not running off with her. Better me than some older guy who could be a real threat. I'm doing them both a favor, and I still think he's a good guy. Want to check out his artifact collection? He's got some really cool stuff in his home office. You'll love it. Suddenly, Ben and Cal got all excited about my toys, like the kids they still were, and were thrilled by both my toys and my wife. The thing with Mrs. Moore is just sex, pure and simple. Fantastic sex, but nothing more. After talking a bit more about the wonders of my wife's body, they left. The tingling was getting stronger. Thankfully, shortly after that, someone came in, and I managed to get their attention. I think I told them to call an ambulance. That's how it sounded in my head, but not in reality. Thankfully, they realized I wasn't just some drunk and called the ambulance, and now I'm in the hospital. I leaned back on the pillow and thought about Mim and me. We've been married for 32 years. We got married on Mim's 21st birthday. We don't have children. That was disappointing for me, but not for Mim. She didn't want kids. I did, but I wanted Mim more. End of story. She was enough for me, always enough. I thought I was enough for her too. I thought that, until I stopped. Not having kids meant we could travel and do whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted. It gave us a sense of freedom that other couples our age with children to support didn't have. It also gave us some extra income to play with. Though we're not wealthy, we easily managed the mortgage and paid it off many years ago. We have a nice home, not huge, but we don't need that much space for just the two of us. In fact, we didn't even need the two spare bedrooms. One of them was used by Mim as a walk-in closet. She had beautiful clothes and loved looking good. The other spare room was my home office. I've always been passionate about history, and I kept my collection of military maps, memorabilia, and other artifacts and collections there. It's not as bad as it sounds, I swear. Everything was once used in lessons at school. Tools of my trade, if you will. Mim was just glad that everything was stored there and that all my junk didn't encroach on the rest of the house. I was proud of being a good teacher. I knew that my love for history wasn't shared by many to the same extent. Those who don't have that passion tend to find it a dry subject. My mission was to make it as engaging and relevant as possible for the kids in my classes. I think, to some extent, I succeeded. I tried to make it fun and interesting. I don't want to brag, but my popularity with the kids sometimes sparked a bit of professional jealousy, but I handled it. If the kids sometimes liked me more than my subject, I didn't mind. They were still learning. I'm of average build. I keep myself in shape, but Mim was always beautiful to me. She was an ordinary young woman, but aged very well. She always had a large chest. When we first met, she complimented me, saying I always looked her in the eyes. Most guys just stared at her chest. I didn't want to admit that I simply timed my glances at her perfectly whenever she looked away. Every time. Her chest had fascinated me since the moment we first met 34 years ago. I adored her, and the fact that in the pub bathroom they were mocking her as having a big old chest made me angrier than I could express. I should probably take a few deep breaths. They help keep my blood pressure in check. Mim and I never had anyone else. Well, at least I didn't. When we met, I was a virgin. We always had a very good sex life. Unlike most couples, we maintained the same pace when we hit our 30s and even into our 40s. We both had strong sexual drives, and without the distraction of children, we continued to live just like we had in the early years of our marriage. We were never bored. We experimented and added new excitement, some role-playing here and a lot of other kinds of sex there. That was the case until Mim turned 40 and went through menopause. It was a really hard blow. She didn't handle it well at all. At that point, our love life came to a complete stop. I wasn't even allowed to touch her. If I tried to cuddle, it meant I only wanted one thing. And if I suggested making love, I was a heartless bastard. Didn't I have any sense of how she felt? Well, no, I didn't. But as a loving husband, I did my best to support her. So, we went from a very active sex life to a dead bedroom. There was no sex for 2 years. I suggested putting a bed in my office to give her some space. Honestly, I thought she would be happy about it. She could set the temperature in the bedroom to whatever she needed and not worry that I might jump on her at any moment. In a selfish sense, it was hard for me to be in the same room with her. It wasn't just the visual arousal when I saw her getting dressed or undressed, but also her scent when I lay next to her. It was torture for me. On top of that, I was freezing because she kept the window open in the dead of winter, since she was always hot. When I suggested moving out temporarily, I became the embodiment of evil. I was rejecting her. I didn't care. I was cruel. Let's just say, I never moved out of our bedroom. No, I stayed, freezing, frustrated, but satisfied that in my otherwise useless life, I was a husband who supported her. Then, suddenly, like a spring flower blooming at 52, everything fell back into place for Mim. The menopause fairy flew off to find her next victim. She left Miriam with a few extra curves, which suited her very well. Unlike some women, the menopause fairy also left Mim with a renewed sex drive. Unfortunately, over those years, I seemed to have lost my ability to perform, though not the desire. At first, I thought it was just from a lack of use, but no, it turned out to be erectile dysfunction. My doctor at the time was young and completely unsympathetic. He didn't reassure me or help ease my situation in any way. He clearly thought that this old man shouldn't be worried about such things. He explained that it was a side effect of my blood pressure medication and that I would have to live with it. He was very matter of fact. I was devastated. I felt embarrassed and humiliated. It had been hard enough just to ask for help. I decided to approach it from a strategic point of view. I could either give up on making love entirely or embrace a new way of being intimate with my wife. My pleasure would come from her pleasure. I still had other parts of my body, didn't I? I had been missing closeness and intimacy with him for so long, and I wasn't going to lose it again. We continued making love, but in a different way. Don't they say the brain is the biggest sexual organ? We made love 2 or 3 times a week. She continued to experience a lot of pleasure. But it wasn't just about her. I regained my confidence and pride in the fact that I could still give her such joy. As for regular sex, I was more than happy to use toys to satisfy that need. The only bit of male pride I held on to was that the toys I used on her could only be used when she was with me. I know, it's silly, but I needed to feel like they were an extension of me. She had other toys she could use on her own if she felt the need. So we were happy, or so I thought. I was still satisfying her. As for me, I rediscovered the joy of being hugged, caressed, and kissed. I was cherished, and Mim was still desired. I thought that was enough. I was wrong. At the hospital, they soon discovered that my stroke was ischemic, so a combination of medications was quickly prescribed. Timing was crucial to prevent further damage and another stroke. Fortunately, I regained my voice, though finding the right words was initially a challenge. A kind nurse named Louise told me they had contacted Mim, though she was still a few hours away. I managed to tell her that under no circumstances did I want to see her. I think Louise assumed this was part of my condition until she saw my blood pressure spike dramatically. I asked her to call my sister to come instead. She was local, and I knew she would arrive much faster than Mim anyway. My older sister would help me. Our Margaret is a big girl, 6 feet tall in stockings, size 9 shoes, by the way. When we were kids, she protected me, and I knew she would be there for me now. It seemed like only a few minutes had passed from the time they called her, and she was already there. Nurse Louise asked if she had flown in. Only on a motorcycle, darling. It's a Kawasaki, and when I need it, it flies. With that, she hugged me tightly and wiped a tear from her cheek. You big, stupid bastard. You made me cry. You scared me so much. Don't you ever do that to me again. If you die on me, I'll kill you myself. We all laughed at that, even Nurse Louise. I told our Margaret what had happened, what I had overheard. I didn't mind if Louise heard it too. I'll make sure she doesn't get in to see you. I need to make sure we keep you as calm as possible. You might want to list your sister as your next of kin on the hospital forms. It's not actually a legal requirement. You can name anyone you like, Louise said. Well, I am his closest blood relative, Margaret said. We're all each other has now. Later, I was told that Mim was upset when she was informed that I didn't want to see her. Of course, she didn't know why and caused quite a scene. I don't blame her. I had no doubt that she was genuinely worried about me. But deep down, I also knew that she still loved me. Her concern for me was the beginning of her punishment. I know I need to talk to her. I'm aware of that. I wasn't planning to end a 32-year marriage without a conversation, but I was certain the marriage was over. She may have made me a cuckold, but I was damn sure I wouldn't be a willing or knowing one. Eventually, Mim ran into our Margaret. She was waiting for her in the hospital parking lot. I told Margaret to say as much as needed, but no more. When Mim finished crying and was reassured that I wasn't in immediate danger, she asked why I didn't want to see her. Margaret simply said, "You almost killed my brother with your antics. You're a filthy creature. I don't want to talk to you anymore." With that, she lowered the visor on her helmet and roared off into the night. When I was discharged from the hospital, I went to Margaret's. She still lives in Mom's bungalow. She bought out my share after Mom passed away. I was discharged with a list of rehabilitation instructions. Fortunately, I had recovered enough to be home, but further improvement required various therapies and support. I stayed with Margaret for just one day before asking her to invite Mim over. I needed to have the conversation I had been avoiding. I needed to hear what she had to say. I'd like to say that some part of me might be able to forgive her. I had loved her for so long, and I still loved her, or at least the woman I thought she was. But I also knew that I am a stubborn, unforgiving Yorkshireman. Combined with my male pride and ego, I didn't think I was capable of forgiving her, even if I wanted to. I needed to be able to look at myself in the mirror with some sense of pride. At that moment, I couldn't do that. I asked Margaret to keep out of sight. She disappeared on her bike in full gear, leaving the door on the latch so Mim could come in. She looked worse than I did. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and she didn't look like she had slept. Trevor, I don't know whether to kiss you or slap you. Do you have any idea how worried I've been about you? If you thought you were sparing me emotional pain by not letting me see you, you were wrong. I can't eat. I can't sleep. So it's all about how this affects you, Mim? No, but I just don't understand why you're being so cruel. You know why, Mim? Think about it. I know you've been thinking about what Margaret said to you. What could you have done that upset me so much I ended up in the hospital, and that made Margaret refuse to talk to you? Want a hint? Ben Mortimer. She had enough decency to flinch when I said his name. She quickly gathered her thoughts. What about him? He's just a silly boy from work. A silly boy you're sleeping with. How did you find out? I was so careful. Well, unfortunately, not careful enough to sleep with someone mature enough to be discreet. I overheard him telling his buddy Kieran what an amazing lover you are. How he loves fondling your big old chest. The look of horror on her face was quite something. I'm so sorry you had to hear that. It must have been terrible for you. Well, it was bad enough to land me in the hospital. Darling, you shouldn't have let it upset you. It's nothing. He means nothing. Nothing to me. Nothing to us. I have no feelings for him. Except for lust. He's just like another sex toy. You were still satisfying me in your own way. Very satisfyingly. There was just something missing. When I had the chance to have a real toy made of flesh and blood, not just a hard piece of plastic, I couldn't resist. Couldn't or wouldn't. You left me without sex for 2 years. 2 years. I could have gone and found myself a real lover made of flesh and blood, couldn't I? That wasn't my fault. It was the menopause. At that moment, I truly lost control. And it wasn't my fault. It was because I was sick. In sickness and in health. Remember that? Forsaking all others? Does that ring a bell? It's okay for me to be unsatisfied, but not for you? Is that it? My God, your selfishness is unbelievable. The real difference is that you left me without affection, without hugs, without kisses, without anything for 2 years. I still loved you. I was still by your side. You abandoned me for 2 years and completely rejected me. You discarded me, Mim, and now you've done it again. She turned away, unable to look at me. Just imagine how it felt to hear a couple of guys laughing about my wife, talking about her like some street adulteress, discussing my most personal medical condition, laughing because I can't get it up, doing things with him that you haven't done with me in years. In my own home, you even let that little bastard into my personal office. What did I ever do to you besides love you? What did I do to deserve such disrespect? It wasn't like that. You're twisting everything. I wasn't disrespecting you. I was just using him. It didn't affect my love for you. It was separate. It was just sex, that's all. Just sex. So, no tenderness? No real intimacy? Yes, exactly. Just a physical act. I waited until I was sure she was looking me in the eyes. Mim, you're mistaken. No real intimacy? I think letting someone else enter your body is probably the most intimate thing you can do. What about kissing? What about kissing? You care about kissing? She scoffed. You know, historically, adulteresses didn't kiss their clients because it was considered too intimate. Are you saying I'm an adulteress? In my entire life, I've only slept with 2 men, you and him. Is that supposed to make me feel better? I'm not calling you an adulteress, Mim. At this moment, I have more respect for sex workers than I do for you. I could see her anger rising. Enough of this. You're behaving absolutely horribly. You're starting to really piss me off, Trevor Moore. Go pack your things. You're coming home with me. We need to forget all this nonsense and get back to our normal life. What do you consider normal, Mim? Is it normal for you to sleep with teenagers in our bed? Or is it normal for me to have a faithful, devoted wife? I can't quite understand how out of touch you are if you think the latter is normal. You're being absolutely ridiculous right now. You're coming home with me. I want to know. I need to take care of you. I can't stand it when you need me. I'm not going home, Mim, and I definitely don't need you. I love you. I can't help that. I wish I didn't, But I don't need you, and I certainly don't want you. You can't be serious. Yes, it seems you don't realize what you've done to me, to our marriage, or to our love. The fact that you don't seem to take your actions seriously tells me everything I need to know. Our values and needs are too far apart. I'm shocked that you haven't even asked for forgiveness. Let me be honest with you. You deserve that after all these years. Even if you had thrown yourself at my mercy and begged for forgiveness, I doubt it would have changed anything. But we'll never know, will we? The truth is, you don't feel you did anything wrong. You're sorry I found out, but you're not sorry you did it. That's why our marriage is over, and that's why I'm divorcing you. You took something very valuable to me and shattered it without any respect. I just can't give you what you need anymore. So I'm freeing you, so you can have all the flesh and blood toys you want. I'm also freeing myself, because being married to you is clearly dangerous to my health. That could have been the end of the conversation, but of course, real life isn't that simple. Mim wasn't finished yet. You're talking nonsense. There will be no divorce. You're coming home with me right now. I love you, and I need you. You can't just throw away 32 years of marriage because of this. I can't believe you're being so selfish. It was nothing. Nothing. That's the problem, Mim. For me, it was something. The level of disrespect you showed me, in my own home, for God's sake? Unbelievable. I'm the selfish one? Now get out of here before you hurt me even more. Shortly after she left, I heard Margaret returning on her bike. She rode straight into the garage, but didn't come into the house. I went into the garage myself to tell her what had happened. She was just tightening a screw on the rear license plate. Don't ask, she smiled. I was just preparing a little gift for my favorite brother. Just for your brother? Well, you'll still be my favorite. So, what did my former sister-in-law have to say in her defense? Offer a heartfelt apology? Not quite. No, I didn't think so. She was always a smug brat, though you could never see it. Come on, kid. Onward and upward. I'll make us a cup of tea. A few days passed when I read in the local newspaper that Ben Mortimer, 19 years old, had fallen down a set of stairs in the old town. The stairs were very dark and narrow, squeezed between rows of Georgian terraces. They led down to the waterfront and were a popular route for drunkards making their way home. He reeked of urine. Poor Ben. Broken leg, collarbone, several ribs, and covered in urine. What a shame. There was a picture of him. He looked awful. Isn't it lucky that this happened when I was with Mim? Isn't it lucky that the police still haven't found any witnesses to the accident? A tall guy in motorcycle gear. Thanks for the gift, I said, handing the newspaper to Margaret. No idea what you're talking about, she smirked. Here's a real gift from me. I opened the box she handed me and found a small collection of World War I medals. I thought you might like them. I found them in a shop in the old town. Mim and I, of course, divorced. She resisted a bit. It seemed she never fully got over the shock that I couldn't simply accept her infidelity. After selling the house, we both bought apartments on opposite sides of town. Our paths crossed surprisingly rarely. I went back to work. I admit, that first Christmas was tough for me. I put on a bit of a show at work, drowning my sorrows, I suppose. One of the younger guys, Darren, drove me home, and I told him my story. His reaction and the support he gave me reassured me that any man in my position would have done the exact same thing. I retired still on my own. Margaret and I spent a lot of time together until she packed up and moved to Greece for her retirement. I still saw her during the holidays. For a while, life got a bit dull, though I was still occupied with my history. At 65, I got a new neighbor, Brenda. We became good friends, companions, and eventually more than that. We fell in love. The closeness between us grew until we were sharing a bed and making love in our own way. One night, quite early in this new phase of our relationship, something happened, literally, and we certainly didn't waste any time after that. I rushed to the doctor as soon as possible to find out if this was a one-time occurrence. There was an elderly doctor who was shocked to learn how little support I had received in the past. He was also saddened to hear that my erectile dysfunction had played a significant role in the breakdown of my first marriage. With his help and a slight adjustment to my medication, getting and maintaining performance was no longer a problem. Everything was sorted by the time we went on our honeymoon. That was 10 years ago. Now we're both 75, and we still love each other very much. As far as I know, Mim never remarried. She moved away after I got married again. The last time I saw her, she was very bitter. There was a hardness and resentment in her that wasn't there before. It happened right after Brenda and I got engaged. We were sitting in our favorite cafe, having coffee, when Mim showed up. I introduced them, and Mim said something so venomous that it took my breath away. Well, I hope you can live without proper sex, because he hasn't been able to get it up for years. I think, dear, he might have just needed the right woman. This morning, before breakfast, he certainly gave me something very solid, Brenda said with a smirk. Mim looked at me. Really? Yes, really, Mim. Turns out, all I needed was to be with someone loving and selfless, who actually cared about me. With those words, Mim walked away. Jealousy is a terrible thing. If anyone knows, it's me. I once felt it very intensely. Let's hope she found what she was looking for. I found, in the end, a loving and faithful wife. Strangely enough, Ben Mortimer is now our mailman. He's nearly 40. He was horrified when I opened the door to our apartment that first time. He apologized for what had happened, saying he was just a foolish, sex-obsessed boy back then who didn't know any better. Now he's happily married, and he's even more ashamed of what he did. Especially because you were always my favorite teacher. I'm so ashamed of what I did. I'll always regret it. I told my wife everything when we were dating, and she was so disgusted when I told her. It took me a while to convince her to marry me because she said she couldn't be with someone who didn't respect marriage vows. In the end, I convinced her that I had learned from my mistakes. I hope in time, I can convince you of the same. There's no need for that, Ben. It was 20 years ago. Ancient history. I appreciate your apology. It's more than I ever got from him. Anyway, we've all moved on. How about we go back to being just an old teacher and a former student? Then I did something I never thought I'd be able to do. I shook his hand. I also managed to slip into the conversation that my medical issues were resolved long ago. I think I embarrassed him. People really don't like thinking about seniors having sex. Now, when I see him, we laugh and joke. I always tell him as he leaves to be careful on the stairs. Thank you for listening until the end. See you in the next episode of Cheating Secrets. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.